Hello my friends! If you're new here, my name is Rachel and welcome to the channel, and if you are returning, hi, welcome back. It's so nice to see you again. Happy New Year everyone! Say goodbye to 2023 and hello to 2024. I am starting the year off right with an iced pumpkin spice latte because my local coffee shop offers them year-round, which soothes my little autumn heart, and I am just cozied up soaking in these final days of the year before welcoming a new chapter into my life. I hope that you all had an amazing holiday season and spent tonight ushering in the new year in whatever way suits you best. Honestly, the holidays kind of kicked my butt this year, so I wanted today's video to be very chill, a laid-back little speed build featuring some forest transitions and an abandoned turnip farm that I am so proud of. So without further ado, let's jump into the speed build. We're starting here on the upper cliff area above the entrance, which is a spot that gave me so much trouble. I haven't really been able to play nearly as much Animal Crossing as I would want to because of the holidays, and I was fighting against some severe burnout because of just how little time I had to think about 𝒷𝓊𝓃𝓃𝓎. So I've kind of been tackling this island in a bit of a different way than my usual process. When I dive into islands, I tend to enjoy working section by section and not moving on until I have an area fully completed, but with this island, I have been jumping between like 5 different areas because I still feel like the vision that I have for this island really isn't that strong. I can't tell if it's just because of the item selection that we have in game, or if it's the limitations of like the building mechanics, or even if it's just because the holidays coming in and just like sucking the life force out of me, but it has definitely been a struggle. But being an Animal Crossing builder with a bit of a platform both here on YouTube and over on Instagram as well, it kind of feels important to talk about stuff like this because I want you all to know that you aren't alone in feeling stuck or burnt out on your own island. It's one of those things where it's very easy to look at people online and see these amazing islands coming together and not really seeing the actual process behind it, and the fact that a lot of people struggle with the same things in the community. There's a lot of burnout, there's a lot of comparison, you know, looking at your island and wondering why it doesn't look like somebody else's island, and at the end of the day, we are all just struggling with these same issues because of the things that we were given for this game, and sometimes it's just a lot easier to work on one theme instead of another. Like take Pottsfield for example. I had almost too many ideas for that island, and it made bringing it all together so much quicker because I had so many options in my head. But with 𝒷𝓊𝓃𝓃𝓎, even though I love the idea of this island, it's a theme that is definitely considering itself to be a bit of a struggle for me, but I know in the end everything will get brought together and it'll all look amazing. It's just that process and that struggle that we all go through trying to really bring across what we want on an island with the limitations that we have in game. I also think that not having the time to truly study my inspiration pictures and to really create an island layout has also kept me from being able to feel like I'm actually progressing with this island. As much as I enjoy the idea of the holidays, Christmas is always one of the most stressful times of the year for me, and it has been such a rough time for my creativity. I don't know if you feel the same way, but the past few Christmases have felt particularly bland and just really lacking in Christmas spirit. It also probably didn't help the fact that it was like 60 degrees for me on Christmas Day. It's been hot all this time in December and just not very Christmassy, and not only did we not get our Christmas tree up until Christmas Eve, like the night before Christmas, but my partner and I actually just finished up the rest of our Christmas shopping for each other as of today, so it's just definitely been a very interesting Christmas this year. It also probably didn't help that we were moving at the start of December, so we really had no time for setting up for the holidays because we were busy setting up our apartment that we moved into. But I have of course completely rambled across this entire speed build that we have done so far. As you can see, I placed down a winding dirt path, but I definitely made sure to leave it a bit wider to make sure that there is an obvious trail for your player to take through the area. I also made sure to line the pathway with clutter to make it still feel like it's a filled-in forest, and I also staggered some trees at varying growth heights just to give a bit of a more interesting sightline going on. I really wanted to embody the feeling of a wintry pine forest while still making sure that it's easy to navigate since this is technically part of our entrance. When I was first thinking up this island in my head, it featured a lot more empty, barren spaces, but I just can't let myself leave too many barren tiles. I feel like everyone has a specific style when they decorate in Animal Crossing, and there are people who can make emptiness look really intentional and really beautiful, but I would consider myself a bit of a designer who loves maximalism and clutter just to really make a space feel lived in. I tend to design with the philosophy of no tile left behind when I work on a space, and it doesn't lend itself very well to a more barren island design. I'm using a lot of the same items over and over in this particular space, especially items that you've seen already in our entrance speed build, because like I said, I'm considering this an extension of our lower entrance area. I'm placing a mixture of wheat fields with flowers and the black and white variations just to help them blend in with the surrounding items better, and I'm leaning heavily into the use of strange moss because it almost looks like piles of snow and it gives off like this little faint glow, and I plan on Bleakmore's dream address being set on a snowy night in game, so having these little sources of light is just really going to help make everything feel so eerie and magical in this area. As we work on some of the finishing touches, I feel like I have to ask, are you the type of person who makes New Year's resolutions, or do you just head into the new year with zero expectations? Today, my partner and I both made a little list of the things that we want more of in 2024, and while I'm not usually someone who makes resolutions, it was still really fun to see how different our personal priorities were. I'm pretty bad at sticking to plans or limitations that I set for myself, and I do consider myself to be quite a professional procrastinator, so it makes New Year's resolutions pretty impossible for me, but we were playing with the idea of, instead of doing like restrictive resolutions like losing weight or spending less money, we decided to choose things that we want more of in the new year. I want 2024 to be a year that's filled with a lot of growth, both personal and here on the channel, and I want it to be a year that's filled with some new friendships. I want more creative exploration. I wrote down wanting more of a focus on just being kind to myself and exploring some new hobbies and creative outlets. Ever since the pandemic, it has felt so difficult to be creative. I've felt so stunted and burnt out, but there's just something so refreshing about being able to wake up tomorrow and have it be the first day of a new year. It's like a time to just start fresh. While I wouldn't consider myself someone who is particularly spiritual or even metaphysical, I am a writer, so I do love some good symbolism, and I feel like there's a lot of power and growth that can be had in starting a new chapter. And for me, January 1st has always been the real-life equivalent to the opening line of a book. It's really a time that's meant for taking a deep breath and just giving yourself some room to grow and change, and it feels really good for my mental health to also visualize it as just like being able to wake up tomorrow and leave all of the bad stuff that happened in 2023 behind me. So if you have any New Year's resolutions or just things that you want more of in the new year for yourself or even the channel, do be sure to let me know in the comments down below so that we can all come together as a community and share the love and really just manifest all of the good vibes. Now, I have totally rambled on per usual while the build has been going on. We are now just finishing up the second tier entrance with some trees before moving to an area that was an unexpected addition to the island. As you can see here, I used some pathing to just map out the area and figure out the sizing for the faux building that we are going to be putting together. Here's a little spoiler for a future build, but originally I was planning on putting an abandoned churchyard here with a huge fake crumbling church building and an adjoining graveyard. But as you can see, I am building already on the second tier, and the building dimensions required 3 full levels, and I just couldn't build it all out because of the cliff height limitations in game. So instead, I got a random burst of inspiration to put together this little rustic abandoned turnip farm. Here I am putting together the formation of the house by using an array of items such as storefronts, a simple panel for the door, and one of those thatched gazebo roofs that you can see in just a moment here. I really love how this area turned out. I think it's so cool and so different from what I was originally envisioning on going here, but I was thinking about possibly updating it to have a second floor in the future. I feel like that might make everything look a bit more put together, and I also need to go through and kind of change the color of these storefronts because they don't all match up together. I wish that there was a bit more of a seamless color scheme to put together for the gazebo and the storefronts, but regardless, I am loving how this area turned out. I really just feel like this is one of those spots where when I was building it, I kind of just let myself do whatever felt right and whatever felt natural. Now, there is a blank space underneath this farm area that pretty soon soon we'll be turning into a forest, and I think that was my big struggle with working on this part of the island, was just trying to figure out, okay, how do I have a forest and how do I not make everything a forest? I wanted it to feel a bit more transitional, and my boyfriend gave me a really great idea of going through and actually using the rocks in game, like the tall garden rock, flat garden rock, and some of the 2.0 items like the caves, and almost making this rocky barrier to separate the forest from some more put together builds. So you'll see me do that in a little bit as a bit of a testing the waters type of thing. Like, I didn't go all out with it, but that was one way that he was trying to help me figure out how to transition this area from forest into other things. But then I kind of got the idea to put this farm area together. It made sense. Using the fencing made a lot of sense, and so that's why I decided to make this a very closed-in area, and I really think that it looks so cool nestled against this forested spot. I kind of am viewing Bleakmoor as the type of place where, like, you don't really talk to your neighbors, which is interesting because Animal Crossing is a game that is literally built around the mechanic of talking to your neighbors, but I don't know, I like the idea of everyone living in Bleakmoor kind of fending for themselves. Not that there isn't a sense of community, but winters are just so harsh that really all you have the ability to do is focus on yourself and making sure that you can make ends meet, which feels very dark, very not cozy for what is the coziest game in the cozy genre, but something about it just, it seems fun. It's interesting trying to figure out how dark you can turn Animal Crossing when it's a game that is built on that aspect of community and friendship, and just seeing how far you can really push the items and the custom design codes that we have in game. And it's not really what I had intended on doing for this island. It wasn't supposed to be a challenge of how dark can I make Animal Crossing, but that's kind of what it's turning out to be, and it's really fun playing in more of that adult style, I guess. And yeah, just really seeing how things are coming together. As you can see here, I went through and I filled in the entire dirt space just to make it feel a bit more overgrown and abandoned. It's hard to label this as an abandoned farm because there are fires going on. As you can see in the storefronts, there are lights, so it almost implies that there is somebody in there, but I am kind of writing this off to be a bit more of an abandoned farm. Now, if you don't follow me over on Instagram, I do have an Instagram page where I post all of the builds that I do here for the channel, and I have some sneak peeks up for Bleakmoor over on the Instagram as well. But the way that I'm working with the Instagram post is I am writing them almost as if it is a story and my person is going through the island. And when I went through and posted the turnip farm on my Instagram page, I wrote it as being almost forgotten, in the sense where somebody was here but now they're not. Which, like, I guess is what abandoned means, but more so in the sense where, like, there's a fire that's still burning, it's not fully out, so someone was just here, it's just that they recently left, and so that's kind of the vibe that I'm trying to bring across, if that makes sense. I'm going through right now and I'm cluttering up the space next to the home just to really make it feel lived in, giving you an idea of how to transition from that forest into more of a structured build, which I guess was the biggest hurdle that I had with this build, was just figuring out how to make one area transition into another. I know that that's a really common thing that people struggle with in the community, and I mentioned in my last video that I would love to start doing a bit of a tutorial series, and that's definitely something that I want to try and focus on, is how the heck to transition from one spot to another. So do keep your eye out because I am planning a new upload schedule for the channel for the new year. I really want to start uploading more videos throughout the week, more Animal Crossing content, and a variety of topics that are different from just speed build videos. So of course, keep your eye out for what is coming very soon. Now moving on, as you can see here, we are going to start working on the forest area below the turnip farm. The spot is really just filler, but I tried to weave it into the story of the turnip farm by adding some elements that would tie the two spaces together and including some decorations that would imply that someone actually lives here and uses this space. I'm going through right now and laying down some pathing spots to figure out where I want furniture items to go and making sure to leave enough spaces to fill it in with more trees and flowers and shrubs and just a little bit. Something about this area for some reason reminded me of the opening scene for Game of Thrones when the Rangers are riding through this like eerie pine forest before coming across the White Walkers for the first time. Something about the set dressing and the blue-like filter that they put over the opening sequence just felt very present in my mind while I was pulling this whole area together. And working on Bleakmore actually gives me a lot of nostalgia for the Song of Ice and Fire series. I remember when the show first came out, I was like 12 years old, and my friends and I were so excited for the release. I have always loved fantasy, and I had actually read the first 3 books in the series and was in the middle of reading A Feast for Crows when the show finally aired, so my excitement for the series was so real. I remember the early seasons of the show just being so amazing, and I grew up watching it all the way through high school, and nowadays I honestly just choose not to think about the way that the boneheaded showrunners decided to give it the worst ending imaginable. I will never forgive them. It was atrocious watching the finale for that show. But yeah, the way that things in the north are portrayed in the show, and just like the blue filter and like the coldness that they like put across in the show, it's just such a great lens to look through when trying to, make these more forested areas in Animal Crossing. I've mentioned it before, just how much shows and movies and books inspire my designing in Animal Crossing, but it's really interesting seeing how much of it truly stems from my love of certain media, even when I don't intentionally strive for my builds to have any specific link to anything. It's just sometimes when I'm working on an area and I'm really struggling with figuring out how to make it look the way that I want it to, I tend to kind of draw from what's comforting to me, what's familiar, and what I think looks really cool, and in the end, I kind of pull these parallels of, hey, like this reminds me of this thing that I read or this thing that I saw. So it's really interesting seeing how that comes across in Animal Crossing. But now I'm just going through and placing my first bits of decoration around in this area, starting with this little well spot that we are placing right here. You saw me also place down a clothesline and a branch wardrobe earlier, and I was just once again trying to tie these 2 areas together so that way the transition from the forest to the farm felt a bit more intentional. I also really like the idea of using the ranch wardrobe and this more like distressed gray variation to just make it look really rustic and almost like an actual garden shed. But of course, now I'm just going through and starting to fill the space with some foliage and some trees, really making sure that I stagger the trees at varying growth stages. I would say that adding different tree sizes is probably one of the most helpful tips that I can try and give if you're looking for ways to make your own island look a bit more dynamic. If you're wondering how this is done, you can actually take a tree and you can stun its growth at any of the 5 growing stages by planting another tree starter in any of the surrounding tiles. And I feel like when I started doing this on my own islands, it instantly upgraded not only the look or the feel, but also especially the actual depth of the builds that I had going on. I feel like it's so difficult to make these natural spaces actually look natural in game because it's so easy to overthink things, and this also kind of applies to terraforming and waterscaping as well. But I've found that the best way to make something look natural is to not put any thought into it whatsoever. If you're working on a natural space on your island, put on a good podcast or binge some YouTube videos to help silence that little voice in your head and just start plopping stuff down. I've found that when I do this, my areas have just the right amount of items and enough of a varying degree that it looks really natural, and it keeps me from being so indecisive about things, especially wondering would it look weird to have 2 flowers next to each other, when instead my mind just sees an empty space, so I kind of fill it with whatever the first thing in my pocket is, or a random design code that I land on in my catalog. Once again, this also applies to trees. I try to mix them up in my inventory, so that way when I go to plant one, I kind of just pick a random one and I check and see if it works. It may not be a very helpful piece of advice because I know how hard it can be to turn off your internal critic, but if you're able to find yourself in that kind of head empty type of mood, then that's when you know it's time to break out the terraforming tools and planting some trees. But now we're just going through and adding these final touches to the area. It's really crazy seeing how quickly this entire spot came together. But yeah, I'm just going through and filling in the forest with my last couple of items for this space before we move on to the final touches of the entire build. We are coming over here to the turnip farm and actually finally including the turnips. So originally I had regular turnips in this area, but they did spoil because I time traveled, and I kind of loved the way that they looked. So I'm just pairing them with some white pansies that I'm going to go through and pluck to make them look like little turnip plants, and that is everything for the speed build. So let's go ahead and take a look at the beauty shots. Alrighty, my friends, that is everything for this cozy winter speed build and the final beauty shots of 2023. So I hope that you enjoyed watching and have an amazing New Year's. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to let me know below in the comments, and remember to subscribe if you're not yet subscribed, as I would love to have you join our cozy community. With the start of the new year, I just want to take a quick moment and really truly express how much each and every one of you mean to me. Starting YouTube was something so unexpected for me, and diving into it this past year has been one of the biggest life changes for me, but in just like the most amazing way ever. The Animal Crossing community here on YouTube as well as over on Instagram is just seriously so caring and kind and supportive, and the growth and the love that you all have shown me has truly been the biggest highlight of 2023, and honestly just a feeling that I will never forget. I can't wait to see how much we grow and expand in the new year, and I can't wait for all the exciting things to come. I have a little fun channel update that I will be posting tomorrow over on my community tab, so keep an eye out to see some new things coming to the channel with the new year. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.